Once there was a man who was deeply troubled by his own ego. He often found himself in conflicts with others, feeling that he was always right, that his opinions were the only ones that mattered. This constant need to assert himself led to many arguments, strained relationships, and a pervasive sense of loneliness. One day, seeking solace and understanding, he decided to venture into the mountains to meditate and reflect on his life. He hoped that in the stillness of nature, he might find clarity. As he journeyed deeper into the mountains, he came upon a serene lake surrounded by towering trees and vibrant flowers. The water was like glass, perfectly reflecting the sky above. It was here that he decided to spend some time in contemplation. He sat by the water's edge, allowing the tranquility of the scene to wash over him. The gentle lapping of the water against the shore was soothing, and he closed his eyes, breathing in the fresh, crisp air. In his meditation, he began to confront the turmoil within him. He thought about the arguments he had engaged in, the pride that had blinded him, and the way he had dismissed others' perspectives. His ego, he realized, was like a heavy weight dragging him down, preventing him from experiencing true connection with those around him. As he sat in silence, he became increasingly aware of how much he had allowed his sense of self to dictate his interactions. Suddenly, he was jolted from his thoughts by the sound of a boat approaching across the lake. It was an empty boat, gliding smoothly over the surface of the water. The man watched as it drifted closer, curious about its origin. There was no one at the helm, and it seemed to float effortlessly, guided by the gentle breeze. As it neared the shore, the man's initial sense of wonder quickly turned to frustration. He felt as though the boat was intruding upon his peaceful moment, disturbing the perfect stillness of the lake. In a fit of anger, he shouted at the boat, demanding to know why it dared to approach him without a person to control it. He expected some kind of response, some acknowledgement of his frustration. But the boat continued to drift, unperturbed by his outburst. The man's anger grew as he realized that the boat was not responding to him at all. It was simply an empty vessel, moving along the water without intention or purpose. In that moment, a profound realization struck him. He began to understand that his ego was much like the empty boat. It was a construct of his own making, filled with his thoughts, opinions, and the need for validation, yet ultimately devoid of substance. The boat, unanchored and unbothered by his anger, was a reflection of his own state of being. He had been so consumed by his need to assert himself that he had lost sight of the simplicity of existence. As he contemplated this, the man felt a wave of humility wash over him. He recognized that just as the empty boat did not need to justify its existence, neither did he. The need to prove himself, to be right, was a burden he had carried for far too long. He realized that by clinging to his ego, he was only creating barriers between himself and others. The boat had taught him that true peace comes from letting go of the need for control and embracing the flow of life. With this newfound understanding, the man began to reflect on his relationships. He thought of the friends he had alienated, the family members he had argued with, and the countless opportunities for connection he had missed because of his stubbornness. The realization was painful, yet liberating. He understood now that by releasing his grip on his ego, he could open himself up to deeper connections and more meaningful interactions. As the empty boat continued to drift, the man felt a sense of lightness in his heart. He stood up, feeling the weight of his ego begin to lift. He decided then and there to embrace a new approach to life, one that would prioritize understanding over being understood, compassion over judgment, and connection over conflict. He would strive to listen more, to empathize, and to appreciate the diverse perspectives that others brought to the table. The sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the lake. The man watched as the colors danced on the water's surface, a beautiful tapestry of reds, oranges, and purples. He felt a sense of gratitude for the lesson the empty boat had imparted. It reminded him that life is not about proving oneself or winning arguments. It is about being present, open, and receptive to the world around him. As he prepared to leave the lake, the man took one last look at the empty boat, now a symbol of his transformation. He understood that it would always be there, a reminder of the ego he had once clung to so tightly. But he also knew that he had the power to choose a different path. With each step away from the water, he felt lighter, more at peace, and ready to embrace the complexities of life without the burden of ego. In the days that followed, the man carried the lesson of the empty boat with him. He approached his interactions with a newfound sense of humility, recognizing that every person he encountered had their own story, their own struggles, and their own wisdom to share. The conflicts that had once consumed him began to fade, replaced by a deeper appreciation for the richness of human connection. The empty boat had taught him that true strength lies not in the need to assert oneself, but in the ability to listen, to learn, and to love. It was a lesson that would continue to guide him on his journey, reminding him that the path to peace is often found in the stillness of acceptance and the surrender of the ego.